Hello, and welcome back to our channel. If you love powerful, emotional stories that inspire and move your heart, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Now, sit back, relax, and let's begin today's journey. The sky was overcast. A fine drizzle misted over Fairview Memorial Park on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Black umbrellas dotted the cemetery, a sea of mourners clad in somber attire. White wreaths were laid neatly beside the large portrait of the deceased, Richard Bennett, 47, a successful entrepreneur, founder of Bennett Tech, and my husband. I, Olivia Bennett, stood frozen by the coffin, tightly gripping the hand of my daughter, Lily. She was only 16, her delicate face streaked with tears. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't devastated, but because I had wept dry over the past 3 days. Now, I just wanted to silently bid farewell to the man who once vowed to love me forever. Surrounding us were family, friends, business partners, and strangers whose faces I barely recognized. The suffocating air of grief and curiosity merged into a heavy silence. The priest's voice echoed solemnly. May the soul of Richard find peace in the arms of the Lord. Suddenly, the sharp clack of high heels pierced the hushed air. Heads turned. A tall, blonde woman with crimson lips and a clearly pregnant belly, 7 or 8 months along, strode confidently toward us. A man in a dark suit followed her, carrying a leather briefcase. Lily squeezed my hand tightly, gritting her teeth. That's Grace Monroe. I knew it. Mom, that woman has no shame. Grace had once worked in Bennett Tech's marketing department. I had privately confronted Richard about the overly familiar messages between them, but he only laughed it off. She's just young and admires me. You're overthinking it. I believed him. 18 years of marriage had taught me to trust him like the sunrise. Grace showed no guilt as she walked straight up to me, cradling her belly and meeting my eyes boldly. Olivia, I'm sorry, but I had to come. She paused, then nodded to the man beside her. This is my attorney, Mr. Simmons. We have an important matter to discuss regarding Richard's estate. I stared at her, as if a snake had slithered from the shadows. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. All eyes shifted to us. Attorney Simmons opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. I'm the designated executor of Richard Bennett's will, signed 2 months ago. According to this document, Mr. Bennett has left the majority of his shares, 51% of Bennett Tech, to the unborn child, his son with Miss Grace Monroe. A collective gasp echoed through the cemetery. My feet felt rooted to the ground. Lily couldn't contain her fury. What are you saying? You slept with my father, got pregnant, and now you show up at his funeral to claim his fortune? You're trash. Grace flinched slightly, but put on a pitiful expression. I know this was wrong, but Richard said this child was the last gift he could leave me. Olivia, I don't want to fight you. I just want to protect my baby. I stayed silent, not because I had no emotions left, but because in that moment, I realized this was all premeditated. A carefully staged drama. At that moment, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, my in-laws, stepped forward. Evelyn Bennett, my mother-in-law, grabbed my hand, her eyes colder than I had ever seen. Olivia, this is a terrible shock. But Grace says it's a boy. Our family has only Richard as the sole male heir. The Bennett line cannot end here. Even though Richard was wrong, we ask you to consider the bloodline. Lily exploded. So what about me? Am I not blood? Evelyn turned away. Douglas Bennett, my father-in-law, spoke firmly. You're a girl. The family name needs a male heir. I could barely believe what I was hearing. 18 years of so-called family love had crumbled into dust in an instant. I calmly asked, You knew about Richard and Grace all along, didn't you? They exchanged glances. Their silence said everything. Lily trembled with rage. Her tear-streaked eyes stared up at me. Mom, don't be quiet anymore. Do something. They can't just take everything. Grace lowered her head and spoke softly. I'm not here to take anything else. Please let my child have what is rightfully his. Just then, someone from the crowd, a longtime business associate of Richard, spoke out. Richard never once mentioned this in any board meeting. This all seems very suspicious. Doubt spread like wildfire. People began to pull out their phones to record. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a circus, but somehow the rightful wife, was being treated like an intruder. I took a deep breath and looked at Grace. If that's what you want, we'll talk later. She nodded, relieved that I hadn't exploded. But in my eyes, the light had gone out. The woman who had endured silently for years finally understood. To survive, you must know when to let go. After the funeral, Lily and I returned home. She was restless, pacing furiously. Mom, you can't let this happen. I gently brushed her hair back and whispered, I have my way. That very night, I quietly went to Richard's private attorney's office. What I found there kept me awake until dawn. I sat in stunned silence in the cold, spacious living room of the Bennett estate. Richard's portrait still hung proudly on the wall, his eyes seeming to mock the foolish wife who had once trusted him with her whole heart. Lily paced back and forth, her face flushed with fury. She could not comprehend the brutal truth that had just been revealed. Neither could I, but I had already learned my first lesson. Calmness was my only weapon now. There was a sharp knock on the door. I knew immediately who it was. The door swung open. Douglas and Evelyn Bennett entered, their faces stone cold. Evelyn didn't bother to hide the contempt in her eyes. Olivia, we need to speak with you. I stood up, keeping my voice steady. Please have a seat. They sat across from me. Evelyn clutched her leather purse tightly. Douglas sighed, as if he were the victim here. We know today's events were hard to process. But as you saw, Grace is carrying our only grandson. I clenched my fist so tightly my nails nearly broke the skin, but I kept my face expressionless. What exactly are you suggesting? Douglas hesitated for a moment before continuing. Richard is gone. Bennett Tech, this home, the estate, everything needs a proper heir. You and Lily are women. One day, Lily will marry and change her name. But this child, he will carry on the Bennett name and legacy. Lily could no longer hold back. She stepped forward, tears welling up in her eyes as she shouted. So what about me? Am I not blood? Am I not your grandchild? Evelyn shook her head, her voice sharp as a blade. You're a girl, Lily. The Bennett line doesn't pass through daughters. We have traditions. My chest felt like it was being pierced with 1,000 needles. All the affection, the times Evelyn had cradled Lily as a baby, the sweet words of my precious granddaughter, all of it was a mask. I spoke slowly, my words deliberate. So, you've known about Richard and Grace's relationship all along? Both of them froze for a split second, their gazes lowering. That was all the confirmation I needed. Lily broke down, tears streaming down her cheeks. I've always respected you. I've always listened, studied hard, and behaved just to make you proud. And yet, you're just as shameful as my father. Evelyn shot up, her face twisted with anger. You insolent brat. How dare you speak to your elders that way? Douglas added sternly. We are talking to your mother. Children are not allowed to interfere. I instinctively pulled Lily behind me, the protective reflex of a lioness shielding her cub. She didn't say anything wrong, I said coldly. I've kept silent long enough. Evelyn drew a deep breath, her voice softening slightly, but still laced with calculation. Olivia, you're a smart woman. You know what's best for yourself and Lily. If you agree to give up your claim to the estate, we will help you and Lily relocate comfortably with a house, money. You won't lack anything. I gave a bitter, icy smile that made Evelyn visibly flinch. You mean buy me off with hush money, so I'll walk away from everything Richard and I built together? Douglas interrupted. It's not bribery. It's an arrangement that benefits both parties. You know Grace used to work at Bennett Tech. She has experience managing the company. You gave up your career after marriage to focus on your family. You don't own any shares, and you have no legal authority over the company. Every word felt like a dagger. I had sacrificed my career for my family, for my husband, for my child, only to be dismissed as nothing. Lily trembled with anger and turned to me. Mom, you can't agree. I don't care about money or houses. I just want you to fight for us. I looked at her, full of love, but with unwavering determination. Sweetheart, let me handle this. I turned to the Bennetts, my voice eerily calm. Fine. If that's what you want, I'll think about it. Douglas nodded and stood up. Good. We hope you'll give us an answer soon. They left the room. Lily immediately threw her arms around me, tears spilling freely. Mom, please don't be weak. Don't let them take everything from us. I stroked her hair gently and whispered, Don't worry, darling. I'm not weak. I'm just preparing my next move. That night, I quietly went to Richard's private attorney's office. What I found in his hidden safe froze my blood. Documents transferring shares, secret offshore accounts, and copies of an enormous life insurance policy worth tens of millions of dollars, naming Grace Monroe, not me or Lily, as the sole beneficiary. I closed my eyes. Richard's betrayal was not just emotional. It was cold, calculated, and ruthless. As I left the office, the Los Angeles sky remained pitch black, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. I knew that the real game had only just begun. The next morning, the first rays of Los Angeles sunlight streamed through the thin curtains. I sat by the window, a cold cup of coffee in my hand, staring at the documents I had taken from Richard's lawyer's office. Dozens of shady transactions, offshore accounts under Grace Monroe's name. I felt both sickened and bitter. The man I had once trusted completely had been plotting this betrayal for years. Lily's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Mom, you're not really going to give up, are you? I set the cup down and gently stroked her hair. Sometimes stepping back is the only way to move forward stronger. Lily frowned, her eyes blazing with anger. No, we can't just let them steal everything. You can't walk away so easily. I sighed softly. She was too young to understand my true intentions. Later that day, at the request of the Bennetts, I arrived at their lawyer's office with Lily, a cold, sterile room on the top floor of a luxury building in downtown Beverly Hills. Inside were Douglas and Evelyn Bennett, already seated, along with Grace Monroe, who looked visibly tense, and her attorney, Mr. Simmons. The tension was suffocating. Evelyn spoke first. Olivia, have you thought this over? We hope you'll make the right decision for everyone involved. I stared directly at her, my voice calm and measured. I agree. The room froze. Douglas raised his eyebrows in disbelief. Grace stiffened, her eyes wide with shock. Even Mr. Simmons looked momentarily stunned. Lily cried out, Mom, what are you saying? I gently squeezed her hand, calming her. Trust me. Evelyn smiled with satisfaction, her tone light, but laced with meaning. I knew Olivia would do the sensible thing. Grace nervously glanced at me, then whispered something to her lawyer. Mr. Simmons cleared his throat, pulled a thick stack of papers from his briefcase, and placed them in front of me. This is the formal agreement relinquishing any claim to the estate and promising not to contest anything in the future. If you agree, please sign here. I calmly took the documents, reading the cold, calculated terms line by line. Every sentence was a chain meant to bind me into permanent silence. Yet I smiled and signed without hesitation. Mom, Lily sobbed, clutching my arm tightly as if afraid I would vanish. I turned to her, softly stroking her hair. Trust me, this is not the end. Douglas let out a satisfied sigh and shook the lawyer's hand. It's done. Grace also exhaled slowly, her expression softening briefly, though I could see she was still wary of me. She knew I wasn't someone who would surrender easily. I stood and swept my cold gaze across the room. From this moment on, Lily and I are no longer connected to the Bennett family. Do not contact us ever again. Grace stiffened. Evelyn frowned, but remained silent. Douglas cleared his throat. You have our word. We will respect the agreement. I took Lily's hand and walked out of that suffocating room. As we stepped outside, the bright sunlight felt like the first welcome we had received in a long time. Days later, a video clip of me signing the agreement was leaked online. Public opinion exploded into two extremes. Some sympathized, praising me for my dignity and refusal to fight for money. Others mocked me, calling me foolish, a saint, and a woman who brings misery upon herself. Her husband cheated, left everything to his mistress, and she just walked away? Unbelievable. Not just foolish, but crazy. Maybe she has another plan. Who knows? Lily was furious reading the comments. She threw her phone onto the couch, her eyes brimming with tears. Mom, do you regret this? I gently held her hand. No, I have no regrets. Remember, sometimes we must let go of what has rotted so that we can rebuild something stronger. I secretly contacted my brother, Andrew, who lived in Vancouver, Canada. He was the only one I truly trusted. I told him everything. Without hesitation, he replied, Olivia, bring Lily here. I'll help you start over. I looked up, and for the first time in months, I felt the faintest flicker of hope. They thought their game was over, but for me, this was only the beginning. 1 month after signing away everything, Lily and I boarded a flight to Vancouver, Canada. The sky was overcast, and light snowflakes drifted lazily to the ground as if welcoming us to a new beginning. My brother Andrew was waiting for us at the airport. The moment he saw me and Lily, he wrapped me in a tight embrace, his voice choked with emotion. My foolish little sister, you finally left that nightmare behind. I smiled faintly, tears silently running down my cheeks. Lily stood close, her expression still wary and resentful. We moved into a small apartment near downtown Vancouver. There were no more lavish mansions, no maids, no luxury cars. Every morning, Lily and I walked to the market to buy groceries, cooked together, and cleaned the apartment ourselves. At first, Lily complained bitterly. Mom, I'm not used to living like this. You didn't have to do any of this before. I placed my hand on her shoulder gently. That's exactly why we have to learn. Both of us. We must be strong and independent. Her eyes still held traces of frustration and anger, but I knew time would teach her the true value of freedom. With Andrew's support, I started building a small financial consulting firm. My experience managing finances at Bennett Tech helped me land my first clients. The early days were brutally hard. I handled the accounting, consulting, marketing, and client meetings all by myself. There were nights I worked until 2 a.m., exhausted and bleary-eyed. But quitting never crossed my mind. Every time I glanced over and saw Lily studying diligently at her desk, it gave me the strength to keep going. She slowly began accepting this new life, even offering to help me enter data and draft contracts. One late night, as I was hunched over my laptop, Lily quietly brought me a cup of hot tea. Mom, I'm sorry I've been so difficult lately. I smiled, squeezing her small hand warmly. It's okay, sweetheart. I know you were just worried about me. Lily lowered her head, her voice soft. But I still can't forgive Grandpa, Grandma, or that woman. I sighed softly. You don't have to forgive them, Lily. They chose their path. We are walking ours. News about the Bennetts still appeared across U.S. media. Grace Monroe had taken control of Bennett Tech as planned, but her lack of experience and poor decisions soon sent the company into a downward spiral. The stock value plummeted, and investors began pulling out. The media dubbed her the destroyer of the Bennett legacy. I quietly read the headlines, but made no comment. Whenever Lily saw me looking at the news, she would frown. Mom, stop caring about them. They're not worth your attention. I nodded silently. One day, Andrew invited me to a small riverside cafe. The chilly wind rustled the trees overhead. Olivia, he said seriously, I know you're still hurting, but it's time to think about your future. I looked at him, uncertainty still clouding my heart. What do you mean? Andrew smiled. I found a potential investor for your firm. If you agree, you could expand within the next 6 months. I was stunned. From a woman discarded and betrayed, I was now being offered the chance to build something truly my own. I gripped Andrew's hand tightly, tears welling in my eyes. Thank you. I don't know where I'd be without you. Andrew ruffled my hair affectionately. You deserve this, Olivia. That night, Lily and I stood on the balcony, gazing at the city lights. The snow had stopped, and the first faint light of dawn peeked over the distant horizon. Mom, Lily whispered, I'm starting to understand. Freedom isn't about living in a mansion or having fancy cars. Freedom is doing what you want and living your own life. I gently pulled her close, my eyes soft as I gazed into the distance. That's right, sweetheart. From now on, we'll live as truly free people. I knew the road ahead would still be long and filled with challenges, but I was no longer afraid. The woman once thought weak had finally learned how to stand up and take control of her life. Life in Vancouver had gradually found its rhythm. My small financial consulting firm continued to grow, steadily gaining more clients. Andrew remained my greatest support, helping me expand our business step by step. Lily, too, had matured. Once resentful and moody, she was now a strong, independent young woman who always stood by my side. I had started to believe that perhaps the storm had truly passed. Until one day, that morning, I was preparing documents for an investor meeting when my phone rang. An unfamiliar U.S. number. I hesitated a moment before answering. A voice I hadn't heard in so long, familiar, furious, and venomous, blared through the receiver. "You filthy woman! How dare you play me like that?" I froze. That voice, unmistakable. "Richard," I whispered in disbelief. "You're supposed to be dead." A cold, mocking laugh followed. "Dead? I never died, Olivia. Everyone thinks I did, but I just disappeared to avoid taxes and hide my real assets." I gripped the phone tighter, my heart racing. Before I could respond, Richard continued. "You were a fool to walk away like that. You think I don't know about your little company in Canada? I'm back, and I'm taking back everything that's mine." I steadied my voice, icy calm. "No, what I have now has nothing to do with you. I built it from scratch, with hard work and tears. With Lily." He scoffed. "I have enough proof to sue you for breaching our separation agreement. You really think you can escape me?" I didn't reply. I quietly hung up. My hand trembled slightly. The nightmare I thought was over had returned. That night, I told Andrew and Lily everything. Andrew stared at me in disbelief. "You're sure it was Richard?" I nodded. I could never mistake his voice. Andrew's expression turned serious. He must have faked his death to dodge legal trouble. Now that his little empire has collapsed, he's crawling back to exploit you again. Lily fumed. "I told you. I knew he wasn't finished. Mom, we can't back down this time." I placed a hand on her shoulder, my voice filled with resolve. "This time I won't." The next morning, I met with a lawyer in Vancouver. Their legal team quickly assured me, "You owe him nothing. Everything you own and operate here is entirely legal under Canadian law." But Richard didn't stop at phone threats. A week later, I received a legal document from his attorney, demanding that I transfer my company to him, citing violation of prior agreements and encroachment on personal property. Andrew slammed his hand on the table in fury. "This is outrageous. He's using legal threats to pressure you." I remained calm. "No, he won't win this time." I started gathering all the documentation I had from day one in Canada. Immigration papers, business registrations, tax records, signed contracts, all clearly proving I had not used a single cent from Richard or any shared assets. At the same time, I hired a private investigator in the U.S. A few weeks later, the findings left me stunned. Richard had indeed faked his death, using a false identity to open offshore accounts and launder assets, dodging taxes and avoiding payouts to former shareholders after Bennett Tech collapsed. The evidence was indisputable. Andrew looked at me, a mix of awe and admiration in his eyes. "What are you going to do now?" I smiled, eyes steely. "Expose everything." I contacted the FBI and turned over every piece of evidence. Weeks later, they launched an official investigation. Richard and Grace Monroe were indicted on multiple charges: financial fraud, tax evasion, investor deception, identity forgery. The story exploded across American media. Major headlines read, "Fake death scheme, billionaire exposed by ex-wife. Olivia Bennett brings justice to light." Lily stared at her phone in disbelief. "Mom, you actually did it." I squeezed her hand gently. "This is a victory for both of us." I knew the legal process wasn't over yet, but I was no longer afraid of Richard. I was no longer the woman they once saw as weak or easy to silence. I was Olivia, a woman who could stand on her own, protect her daughter, and take back her life. That evening, Lily and I stood on our balcony, overlooking the sparkling lights of Vancouver. The stars above and the city below shone with hope. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "we've come a long way, but our journey is only beginning." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with quiet strength. "I'll always walk with you, Mom, wherever we go next." I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt the true freedom flowing through my veins. News of Richard Bennett's faked death and financial fraud spread rapidly across social media, newspapers, and television in the United States. My name, Olivia Bennet, appeared in countless headlines, from the betrayed wife to the courageous woman who exposed a criminal ex-husband. Some people sympathized and admired me. Others mocked me, claiming I only wanted attention or orchestrated the story out of revenge. I didn't care. Fame, gossip, it meant nothing compared to the safety of my daughter and me. One afternoon, while I was preparing presentation materials for an investor meeting, my assistant, a bright Korean-Canadian girl named Nyma, burst in with a wide smile. "Olivia, good news. Northview Capital has officially agreed to fund our Series A round." I blinked, momentarily stunned, before breaking into a radiant smile. "Really? Nyma, thank you so much." After months of persistent negotiation, the dream of expanding the firm had finally come true. This new capital would allow me to hire more staff, invest in AI-driven financial analysis, something I had dreamed of since the beginning. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at home with Lily and Andrew to celebrate. Lily sat across from me, eyes sparkling. "Mom, you're becoming a real businesswoman now." I laughed. "Wasn't I always? I just didn't get the chance to show it." Andrew raised his glass of wine. "Because you spent your life living for others. Now it's time to live for yourself." We clinked glasses, my eyes shining, not with tears but with resolve. This time, no one will control my life but me. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I threw myself into work with the passion of someone rediscovering youth. I spoke at finance seminars, became a mentor for female-led startups, and slowly became a symbol for women who had experienced emotional abuse, betrayal, or sacrificed their careers for family. I never shared my pain in detail. I simply said, "If I can do it, so can you." A major finance magazine interviewed me and asked one final question. "Do you regret signing away everything after your husband's death?" I paused for a moment, then answered, "No, I didn't lose anything. I reclaimed what truly belonged to me, with my own hands and mind." As I was rising like a fresh breeze in Canada's financial world, the trial of Richard and Grace in the U.S. entered its final stages. I didn't return to testify. I didn't need to. The evidence I had provided was more than enough. But unexpectedly, Grace sent me a handwritten letter, 4 pages long. I hesitated, then opened it. I didn't think he would go that far. At first, I thought Richard just needed to disappear for a while. I didn't know he was using me as a shield, turning me into an unwilling accomplice. "I know I ruined your family. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I want you to know I've paid for it. I've been isolated, despised, and I'm now raising a child who will grow up knowing his father is a criminal." I folded the letter quietly. No anger, no pity. I had moved past needing an apology to heal. I didn't need it anymore. One autumn evening, I was reading by the fireplace when Lily came over holding her tablet. "Mom, look at this." I leaned over. It was a post on a women's immigrant forum titled "Olivia Bennet, A Story of Rebirth." One section read, "She didn't win through revenge. She won through growth. She didn't take back an inheritance. She built an empire of her own without carrying anyone else's name." I smiled, not with pride, but with quiet understanding. My journey had inspired others, women who had been abandoned, betrayed, or belittled. I turned to Lily. "Do you think I'm okay now?" Lily rested her head on my shoulder. "I've always thought you were amazing, but now, I've never been more proud." I held her close, feeling the warmth of a bond that no one could ever break. A month later, I received an invitation to speak at the Global Women's Leadership Summit in Toronto. I would stand before thousands of women from around the world and tell my story, not as a victim, but as a survivor, as a victor. I knew, deep down, that the Olivia Bennet standing there would not be the same woman who once knelt in grief at a funeral, humiliated and dismissed by her in-laws. I would be myself, proud, strong, and free. The main hall of the Toronto International Conference Center glowed beneath the lights, and a thunderous round of applause echoed as I stepped onto the stage. Standing before thousands of women from around the world, I felt my heart pounding, but I was calm. Lily sat in the front row, her face glowing with pride. Andrew, beside her, nodded in quiet encouragement. I held the microphone and took a deep breath. Hello, everyone. I'm Olivia Bennett. I used to be the wife of a successful man, the daughter-in-law of a powerful family, a mother who tried to hold her family together. I paused for a moment, my eyes looking into the distance. But I was also a woman betrayed, belittled, treated like a shadow behind my husband. And today I stand before you, not to talk about pain, but to talk about resurrection. The hall fell silent. Each word I spoke carried like a current, stirring those who had once been broken. I lost everything, my house, my assets, my reputation, just to keep one thing, my dignity. And when you still have dignity, you have the power to begin again. A wave of applause filled the room. I bowed slightly, feeling light as air. After the speech, many approached me, sharing their own stories of painful divorces, starting over with nothing, sleepless nights, raising children alone. I didn't give advice. I simply listened, just as I once longed for someone to listen to me during my loneliest years. A middle-aged Nigerian woman held my hands, tears in her eyes. Your story made me believe women weren't born to endure. We were born to shine. I smiled gently. We all deserve that light. A few months later, my company, OB Financial Insight, officially opened its second branch in Montreal. I hired more staff, training women who had suffered financial abuse to become independent financial advisors. Lily began studying business management at the University of British Columbia. She had retained her fierce honesty and strength, but was now more mature and grounded. One evening, while we were eating noodles in our small kitchen, Lily looked at me and asked, "Mom, if you hadn't signed away everything back then, do you think things would have turned out differently?" I was silent for a moment, then answered softly, "Maybe, but I'm not sure they would have been better. By letting go, I learned my worth. I didn't need someone else's wealth to prove who I am." Lily nodded. I knew she understood. One spring morning, I received a call from a Texas correctional facility. It was Grace Monroe. I was surprised, but agreed to speak with her. Through the cold static of the prison line, Grace's voice had changed, no longer proud or defensive. "Olivia, thank you for not turning away from the truth. Because of you, I woke up. I'm not asking for mercy. I'll face the consequences of what I did." I replied, "Thank you for saying that. But you don't owe me an apology. You just need to live differently when you get your second chance." Her voice cracked. "I will remember that." The call ended. I felt no satisfaction, just a sense of closure. In June, Lily completed her first year of college. Andrew and I hosted a small celebration in the backyard. No fancy guests, no elaborate decorations, just sincere smiles and warm hugs. Lily raised her soda glass and grinned. "I'd like to make an announcement. My mom, Olivia, is not just a businesswoman anymore. She's my greatest inspiration." Everyone burst into laughter. I blushed, but my heart swelled with joy. That night, I sat down to write in my journal, a habit I had recently picked up again. On the final page, I wrote, "A new beginning doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means moving forward unshackled by it. Life never follows a straight line. But if you're brave enough to turn back when you're lost, you'll find your path again." I closed the journal, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed beside my daughter. I knew our journey would still have challenges, but we had learned to love ourselves and to embrace the rebirth of a life that once felt broken. I was no longer Olivia, the ex-wife of Richard Bennett. I was Olivia, my own person,